as the pastor said, I was just sharing with him a little bit of my story. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do, share your story, right? And, man, God has done some amazing things in my life, and so I'm going to share a few of those with you. I was born in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Everybody know where that is? Yeah? Yeah? So, and I've lived in Princeton for about half my life. We were there for 7 years growing up, then moved away. We traveled a lot for my dad's job, and then we moved back, and then I was there until I went off to college. I remember when I was 7 years old, I walked down the aisle, and I didn't fully understand what I was doing, but I knew I needed something. And thank God for the man of God and the men of God that were there. They knew that I didn't fully comprehend, and so they started to counsel with me over the next year or so. And then when I was 8 years old, I decided that it was time to give my life to the Lord, and I had a really godly family. My parents, they decided to homeschool myself and my 4 sisters. We did Awana a lot, memorize hundreds of Bible verses and get like fake money, and it's just a lot of fun. And so really had the word really poured into me as a child. That was really their investment, and I'm so thankful for that. Whenever you have all that, my next years in my life, I would say, became more of my Levitical years, if that makes sense. I really grew in the law, and I grew in my understanding of like the do's and the don'ts. My sisters deemed me as the golden boy because I was like, I didn't really get in trouble that often. That's true. I ended up going to college in 2006, 2007. I went to University of the Cumberlands, and I had a swimming scholarship there. And while I was there, I really remember just walking in the Lord and being on fire for Him for my freshman year. And I went from being a walk-on, like a nobody, to taking 8th place in the nation in swimming that year. And that was crazy. And that was all the Lord. And I was just giving Him all the praise, the honor, and the glory for that. And He kept on increasing different avenues and ways just to glorify Him. My sophomore year, I swam even faster, was 6th place. And then I did something really stupid. I started dating a non-believer. Yeah, I started dating a non-believer. You know that unequal yoke? Yeah, that's not good. And I gave away something. I gave away my virginity to this girl. I was almost 20 years old. And I knew from a child, like, wait till you're married, right? Non-believer. I gave in. And then, all of a sudden, guilt, fear, shame. What are those lies that the enemy whispers to you? Pouring buckets of them on me and on me. And I knew the law, but I didn't fully understand grace. I didn't fully understand what Christ had done on the cross. And so during that time, I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And I started believing even more lies from the enemy. I'm like, well, I'm already going to hell because I did this. I might as well have a fun time going there, right? And so that was my attitude. That was my mindset. So I was like, all right, anything goes. Let's just do this. And man, the Lord's hand was convicting me. He was on me, and I was trying to drown out His Spirit. I practiced and I trained even harder. I took a couple extra jobs, and so whenever my head hit the pillow at night, I just wanted to fall asleep because I didn't want to hear the voice of the Lord because I didn't really believe that He loved me. I was so afraid and so ate up with guilt and shame in this. I started drinking to suppress that, to drown that out, to drown out, one, the lies from the enemy, but also the grace of God. In my junior year of college, it got even worse. I started getting sick because I was pushing myself so hard. I ended up tearing my labrum and having to have surgery on my shoulder. And I started that one relationship ended a long time ago, so I started engaging in other relationships. But the worst part about it was, at that same time, I was a leader in the Christian ministries on campus. I would be leading Bible studies on a Wednesday night. At the same time, I was texting girls I was going to go hook up with later. That was me, hypocrite, right there, saying that. Not proud of it, but that's the truth. That's how far I had fallen. Senior year, now, when you live in sin for a while and the Lord's hand is heavy upon you, you're not going to be doing well. Senior year, I got even worse. I came home for Christmas, Princeton. I was in Princeton. Went to the ER Christmas Day, my senior year. I was so sick. They gave me all kinds of medicines and sent me on my way. Went back to school. I was at school. Went to my first couple classes in the semester. And then all of a sudden, I got a massive fever. I had a fever of about 106. My tonsils swelled up on me, so I couldn't eat, and I just started losing weight very quickly. I went to the doctor, like, we don't know what to do with you. You are really sick. They tested me. I tested positive and negative for mono at the same time, and they're not really sure how that happened. And they were like, you might have other things. We think you might have cancer. We have no idea what's going on with you, but you need to go home. And so they sent me home. And then I was over at Lourdes in Paducah for a long time with all the doctors over there, and they're trying to work on me and trying to figure out what is wrong with me. I weigh about 180 right now. That's the weight that I started with. I dropped down 30 pounds. I couldn't eat. In about 2 weeks, I lost 30 pounds. I was so sick. I was shivering away. I was dying. And they had no idea what was going on with me. But the Lord did. He really did. So laying at home for a couple weeks, I finally got enough strength where I could go to church. My mom was like, Ben, you got to go to church. Everybody's been praying for you. They need to see you. And so I showed up February 7th. It was Super Bowl Sunday. Saints were playing the Colts. And I remember being there at church. I don't even remember what the pastor talked about or worship or anything that Sunday morning, but I do remember this one guy got up at the end. He said, hey, we're going to have revival tonight. Life Action Ministries was coming to this church, and they're going to start a revival tonight. He said, I know that tonight is a Super Bowl Sunday, but if you really love the Lord, you're going to be here. You're going to have that as a priority. And I was like, who is this guy to call me out like that? And I was like, I'm going to show up just to spite him. I'm coming to this pew just to spite him because nobody's going to out-Christian me. That was my attitude. Pharisee, right here. And I did. Man, that night, the way I put it to Pastor, the way I put it to you guys is, let's say Pastor was late coming to church, and he's like, buddy, I was down here, I was on my way to White Oak, and I got run over by an 18-wheeler. And his car was the same, and he looked the same. You'd be like, no, you didn't, because an 18-wheeler, if you got run over by one, you'd be pretty messed up, right? Well, how much more powerful is God than an 18-wheeler? How much more powerful is he? He hit me with an 18-wheeler of grace, love, and mercy that night. And then I like to say he put it in reverse because I needed it again. And he ran over me again. And like literally re-pieced me. I've never been the same, like ever been the same. And immediately in that moment, man, the finished work of Christ on the cross, I instantaneously knew what that was. All that fear, that guilt, that shame dissipated. It went away and instantly. That song, Revelation song that you guys were playing, that was a song that was playing that night. I was so weak, I could not raise my hands. Now when I raise my hands in worship, it always reminds me that I have the strength of God now, that I can raise my hands in worship. But at that point, I could not raise my hands. I was that sick, that weak, that tired. Can you put up Psalms 32? Man, this is my diagnosis. The doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, but check this out. Blessed is he whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. Blessed is the man who the Lord does not impute iniquity, in whose spirit there is no deceit. When I kept silent, my bones grew old through my groaning all the day long. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My, I'm going to say strength, was turned into the drought of summer. Sheila, you can keep going. I acknowledge my sin to you and my iniquity, and have not hidden. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the iniquity of my sin. That night, February 7th, I confessed my sin before the Lord, and immediately there was restoration in my life. Immediately. All of those things that I had messed up, and I had messed up a lot, he made all of my enemies to be at peace with me. He kept me there for another 4 years to do redeem and restore. All of those women that I hurt, I sought forgiveness from and got it. He'd done so many amazing things. Complete restoration, because he doesn't leave anything unfinished. There's no voids here. If he's going to do it, he's going to do it 100%, and that's what he's been doing in my life. And so I'm just grateful to share this with you. And there's another verse I want to share, and this is why it's important to do this. This is David. This is David's prayer after he sinned and messed up with Bathsheba, after he had a man murdered to cover it up. This is after restoring the joy of his salvation. This is what he says he's going to do, because the Lord has restored this joy to him. Now this is what David's going to do in response to that. He is going to teach transgressors God's ways, and sinners will be converted to you. That's why we've got to share our testimonies. We've got to do that. I want to share, in closing, I want to share this song lyric with you. This is by Mercy Me, I believe. And this is their song. And I think it's just called Story, but it says, if I told you my story, you would hear hope that wouldn't let go. If I told you my story, you would hear love that never gave up. If I told you my story, you would hear life, but it wasn't mine. If I told you my story, you would hear victory over the enemy. If I told you my story, you would hear freedom that was won for me. And if I told you my story, you would hear a life that overcame the grave. If I should speak, then let it be of the grace that is greater than all my sin, of the justice that was served where mercy wins, of the kindness of Jesus that draws me in. Oh, to tell you my story is to tell of him. And so, anyways, I just encourage you guys tonight, don't be so caught up in a religion. Don't be like that. Don't be a Pharisee. Get on your knees, repent, change. He's so gracious. He loves you. Don't believe the lies of the enemy. Seriously, don't believe him. He's a liar. He's a deceiver. God loves you. He's here. And love conquers all. And he's willing to do this great work in you that he did in my life. And so thank you for these few moments today.